On the morning of her son's wedding, the village woke up to whispers. It started as a soft murmur near the well, then spread like dry leaves in the wind. By the time the drums began to beat and guests started arriving, everyone had heard the same strange story. Someone had seen the groom's mother dressed in white. Not just any white. A wedding gown. At first people laughed it off. It must be a mistake, some said. Maybe she's helping the bride get ready. But deep down something didn't feel right. In this village traditions were not taken lightly. Weddings were sacred, guided by customs passed down through generations. And one thing was certain. No mother wore a bride's gown to her own son's wedding. No one. Yet as the sun climbed higher and the courtyard filled with music, dancing, and bright colors, all eyes slowly turned toward the narrow path leading to her house. That's when she appeared. She walked slowly, carefully, as if each step carried the weight of something heavy, something no one else could see. The white gown flowed behind her, soft and glowing in the sunlight. It was simple but beautiful. Too beautiful to ignore. Too strange to accept. The music faltered. The laughter faded. And just like that, the celebration froze. Her name was Mama Zola, a woman known across the village for her strength and quiet dignity. She had raised her son, Kofi, alone after his father passed away many years ago. People respected her. They admired her. Some even feared her a little because she was not the kind of woman who spoke without meaning or acted without reason. So when she stepped into that wedding in a gown meant for a bride, no one dared to stop her. But everyone wanted to know why. Kofi stood near the altar, dressed in his finest traditional attire, his face glowing with the kind of happiness that only comes once in a lifetime. Beside him stood his bride, Amara, nervous but radiant, her hands trembling slightly as she held her bouquet. They had waited a long time for this day. Their love had not been easy. There were challenges, whispers, and moments when it almost felt like the world was against them. But they made it. Or at least they thought they did. Because the moment Kofi saw his mother, something inside him shifted. His smile disappeared. His body stiffened. And for a brief second, the joy in his eyes turned into something else, something closer to fear. The guests noticed it. The elders noticed it. Even Amara felt it, though she didn't yet understand what it meant. Mama Zola stopped just a few steps away from the couple. The wind moved gently, brushing against her gown as if it, too, was trying to uncover the truth. Her face was calm, but her eyes held something deep. Something unresolved. No one spoke. No one moved. Finally, one of the elders cleared his throat, breaking the silence that had wrapped itself tightly around the gathering. Mama Zola, he said carefully, choosing his words with respect. Today is your son's wedding day. Why do you come dressed like this? The question hung in the air. Everyone leaned in waiting. But Mama Zola did not answer right away. Instead, she looked at her son. Really looked at him. And in that moment, it felt like the entire past, every sacrifice, every secret, every unspoken truth, was standing right there between them. Kofi swallowed hard. Mama, he started, his voice barely steady, what are you doing? But she didn't respond to his question either. Not yet. Instead, she turned her gaze slowly toward Amara, the bride who now stood frozen, her heart racing with confusion and unease. There was no anger in Mama Zola's expression, no bitterness. Only something that looked almost like sorrow, mixed with a quiet kind of determination. The kind that doesn't come without a story. The kind that doesn't come without pain. And then, finally she spoke. I did not come here to shame anyone, she said softly, her voice steady but heavy with meaning. I came because there is something that must be known before this marriage can begin. A ripple moved through the crowd. Some people exchanged glances. Others held their breath. Kofi's hands clenched at his sides. Mama, please, not today. But Mama Zola shook her head slowly. Today is exactly the day, she replied. Amara looked from Kofi to Mama Zola, her mind racing. She had heard stories about families, about hidden truths, about things that come out at weddings, but this felt different. This felt bigger than gossip or jealousy. This felt like something that had been buried for a long time. Something that refused to stay hidden any longer. The drums had completely stopped now. Even the birds seemed quieter, as if the whole world was waiting to hear what would come next. Mama Zola took a deep breath, her fingers lightly gripping the fabric of her gown. This dress, she began, her voice trembling just slightly, is not just a dress. The crowd leaned in closer. Kofi closed his eyes as if he already knew what was coming. And Amara felt a chill run down her spine. Because whatever Mama Zola was about to say, was not just going to change the wedding. It was going to change everything. This dress, she began again, her voice softer now, yet somehow reaching every corner of the silent courtyard, is not just a dress. It carries a promise, one that was made long before today. A low murmur passed through the guests, but no one dared interrupt her. Kofi opened his eyes slowly. There was tension in his face now, something heavy and guarded. "Mama, please," he said under his breath, stepping a little closer to her. "You don't have to do this here." But Mama Zola did not step back. "I do," she replied gently, not even looking at him this time. "Because this is where it began." Amara felt her grip tighten around her bouquet. Her mind was racing, trying to make sense of the words, but nothing fit. She had met Mama Zola many times before. The woman had always been calm, distant perhaps, but never like this. Never standing in front of a crowd in a wedding gown, speaking in riddles. "What promise?" one of the older women in the crowd asked quietly, unable to hold back anymore. Mama Zola took a slow breath, as if preparing herself to open a door she had kept closed for years. "When Kofi was just a child," she said, "there was a time when I thought I would lose him." The words landed heavily. Kofi looked away. The villagers leaned in. "It was during the dry season," she continued. "The rivers had almost disappeared, the crops were failing, and sickness moved through the village like a shadow. Children were the most affected. Weak, restless, fading without warning." A few elders nodded, remembering. "I did everything I could," Mama Zola said. "Herbs, prayers, long nights without sleep. But nothing worked. Kofi kept getting weaker. There were days he could not even open his eyes." Her voice trembled slightly now, but she did not stop. "I carried him on my back to a place beyond the hills," she went on. "A place many people fear. A place where old traditions still live." The crowd stirred again. Some people shifted uncomfortably. Kofi's jaw tightened. Amara noticed it. "What place?" Amara asked softly, her voice almost lost in the tension. Mama Zola finally looked at her again. This time her eyes were deeper, heavier. "A place where promises are not just spoken," she said. "They are bound." A quiet silence followed. No one needed more explanation than that. In many African folktales there were stories of such places, sacred grounds, spiritual crossings, where people went only when they had no other choice. Places where the line between the seen and unseen was thin. "You went there, for him?" Amara asked, her voice barely steady. Mama Zola nodded once. "I was given a choice," she continued. "A life, for a life. A future, for a future." Kofi stepped forward quickly now. "That's enough," he said, his voice firmer. "You've said enough." But Mama Zola raised her hand slightly, stopping him without even touching him. "No," she said quietly. "I have not." The tension grew thicker. "What kind of choice?" the same elder asked again, his voice more serious now. Mama Zola closed her eyes for a brief moment, as if the memory itself was painful to hold. "I was told that my son would live," she said slowly, "but his life would not belong entirely to me anymore." Amara felt her heart skip. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means," Mama Zola replied, "that the path of his life, including who he would stand beside on a day like this, was not something I could freely choose. Or ignore." The words settled heavily over the gathering. Kofi looked away again, his hands clenched tighter now. Amara turned to him, confusion filling her face. "Kofi, what is she talking about?" He didn't answer. And that silence spoke louder than anything. Mama Zola continued, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "There was someone else. A family, connected to that promise. A bond that was meant to be honored when the time came." A ripple of shock moved through the guests. "You mean, a marriage?" someone whispered. Mama Zola did not respond immediately, but her silence was enough. Amara's breath caught in her throat. She looked at Kofi again, searching his face, hoping, desperately, that he would deny it, explain it, laugh it off, anything. But he remained still. "I tried to forget it," Mama Zola said. "For years I told myself that what matters is that my son lived. That he grew strong. That he found happiness." Her eyes softened as she looked at Kofi. "But promises made in desperation," she added quietly, "do not disappear just because we wish them to." The wind picked up slightly, brushing through the courtyard again. "And this dress," she said, gently touching the fabric, "was given to me on that day. As a reminder. As a sign that when this moment came, I would have to stand and speak the truth." Amara felt her world begin to shift under her feet. This doesn't make sense," she whispered. "Kofi, you knew about this?" There it was. The question everyone was waiting for. Kofi finally looked at her. His eyes were filled with conflict, with something heavy and unspoken. He started, but the words didn't come easily. Mama Zola watched him, not with anger but with a quiet sadness. I did not want this day to come like this, she said. But I could not stay silent. The crowd was no longer just watching. They were fully pulled into the moment now, caught between tradition, love, and something deeper that none of them could fully understand. Amara took a small step back, her grip on the bouquet loosening. So what are you saying? She asked, her voice shaking now. That this wedding shouldn't happen? Mama Zola did not answer right away. Instead, she looked beyond them toward the past she had come from, as if expecting something, or someone. I am saying, she replied slowly, that there is more to this story than what you see today. A distant sound broke the silence. Soft at first, then clearer. Footsteps. Coming from the same path. The guests turned their heads. Kofi's face changed completely. And Amara felt a cold wave of fear settle deep in her chest. Because whoever was approaching was part of that promise. The footsteps grew louder, slow and steady, as if whoever was coming had no fear of the silence waiting ahead. The entire courtyard turned toward the narrow path. Even the children stopped moving, their playful energy replaced by quiet curiosity. Amara felt her heart beating harder with each step she heard. Her mind was full of questions, but none of them had answers. She looked at Kofi again, hoping to read something in his face, anything that would help her understand what was happening. But Kofi looked like a man caught between two worlds. You knew, Amara said softly, her voice almost breaking. You knew all this time. Kofi didn't respond immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the path, his body tense. I knew something, he admitted after a moment, his voice low. But not everything. Not like this. Amara shook her head slightly, trying to hold herself together. How could you not tell me? She asked. We were about to start a life together. I didn't think it would come back like this, Kofi said quickly, finally turning to face her. I thought it was just a story, something from the past that had no power anymore. Mama Zola let out a quiet breath, her gaze still calm but firm. That is where you were wrong, my son, she said. Some promises wait. They do not disappear. The footsteps stopped. Everyone held their breath. From the path, a young woman appeared. She was dressed simply, not like a bride, but there was something about her presence that commanded attention. Her posture was straight, her eyes focused, and her expression carried a quiet strength. She wasn't smiling, but she wasn't afraid either. Amara felt something shift inside her. This must be her. The one connected to the promise. The young woman stepped into the courtyard slowly, her eyes scanning the crowd before resting on Mama Zola. For a moment, the two women simply looked at each other, as if sharing an understanding that no one else could fully see. Then the young woman nodded respectfully. You called, she said. Her voice was calm, but it carried weight. A murmur spread through the guests again. Kofi closed his eyes briefly, as if he had hoped this moment would never come. Amara felt her chest tighten. Kofi, who is she? She asked, her voice trembling. Kofi hesitated. But it wasn't him who answered. My name is Nia, the young woman said gently, turning toward Amara. And I believe our lives were tied together long before we ever met. The words landed heavily. Amara's fingers loosened, and her bouquet slipped slightly in her hand. This is not possible, she said, more to herself than anyone else. This is my wedding day. Nia took a small step forward, her expression softening just a little. I did not come here to take anything from you, she said. I came because I had to. Mama Zola nodded slightly as if confirming her words. The bond was made between our families, Mama Zola explained. On that day when Kofi's life was hanging by a thread. Nia glanced briefly at Kofi, then looked back at Amara. I grew up hearing about it, she said. Not as a story but as a responsibility. My family believed that one day this moment would come. Kofi stepped forward now, his frustration rising. But that doesn't mean it has to happen, he said. We are not children anymore. We can make our own choices. Choices? Mama Zola repeated quietly. Yes, you can make them. But every choice carries a weight. And some carry consequences beyond what we can see. The tension in the courtyard thickened again. Amara felt caught in the middle of something much bigger than herself. A love she believed was strong, now standing against a tradition she didn't fully understand. And what about me? She asked, her voice shaking slightly. Do I not matter in all of this? Nia looked at her, really looked at her this time. There was no anger in her eyes, no jealousy. Only a quiet sadness. You matter, Nia said softly. More than you think. That's why this is not easy for any of us. Amara's eyes filled with emotion, but she held herself steady. Kofi turned to his mother. Why now? He asked. Why wait until today? You could have told me earlier. Mama Zola's face softened just a little. Because I hoped you would find a way to face it before it reached this point, she said. But time has a way of revealing what we try to hide. One of the elders stepped forward, his expression serious. This is no longer just a family matter, he said. This touches tradition, promise, and truth. It must be handled carefully. The crowd nodded in agreement. Amara felt the weight of their eyes again, but this time it felt different. It wasn't curiosity anymore. It was judgment, expectation, pressure. She looked at Kofi, her voice barely above a whisper. Tell me the truth, she said. If this promise never existed, if none of this had happened, would you still choose me? Kofi didn't answer right away. And that silence was louder than anything else. Nia noticed it too. So did Mama Zola. The air felt heavier. The drums, once full of life, now stood silent at the edge of the courtyard, as if waiting for a signal that never came. And somewhere deep inside, Amara began to realize something she wasn't ready to face. This was no longer just a wedding. It had become a test. Of love. Of truth. Of promises made long before any of them had a choice. And the answer to that test was still hanging in the balance. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything that had come before it. Amara kept her eyes on Kofi, waiting. Hoping. Even now, a part of her believed he would step forward, take her hand, and put an end to all of it. That he would choose her, clearly and without hesitation. But Kofi didn't move. His chest rose and fell slowly, like he was trying to steady himself against something deep inside. His eyes shifted between Amara, his mother, and Nia, as if every direction carried a different truth pulling him apart. He started again, but his voice faded. That was enough. Amara took a step back. Not a dramatic one, not sudden, but the kind of step that comes when something inside quietly breaks. The kind no one can fix with words. I understand, she said, though her voice trembled. Kofi's head snapped toward her. No, you don't. I do, she said softly, cutting him off. You're still deciding. Those words settled over him like a weight. Around them the guests shifted uneasily. Some whispered to each other, others watched in complete silence, afraid to miss a single moment. This was no longer just a wedding, it had become something else entirely, something people would talk about for years. The elder who had spoken earlier stepped forward again, his presence steady and grounding. This cannot continue in confusion, he said. A decision must be made. Not in anger, not in fear, but in truth. Mama Zola lowered her gaze briefly, then looked at Kofi. My son, she said gently, this is your moment. Not mine. Not theirs. Yours. Kofi swallowed hard. For a moment it seemed like time slowed. The wind brushed through the courtyard again, lifting the edge of Mama Zola's gown, rustling the leaves of the nearby trees, carrying with it a quiet tension that wrapped around everyone present. Nia stood still, her hands loosely at her sides. She didn't look nervous, but there was something in her eyes now, a quiet vulnerability, like someone who had prepared her whole life for this moment, yet still didn't know how it would end. I never asked for this, Kofi said finally, his voice stronger now, though still heavy. I never chose that promise. I was a child. No, Mama Zola agreed. You didn't choose it. I did. Her words were simple, but they carried deep meaning. And I carry that, she continued. Every day. But now you carry your own choice. Kofi turned to Nia. And you? He asked. What do you want? The question caught her off guard just slightly. Nia hesitated before answering. What I want has never been the center of this, she said honestly. I was raised to honor what was decided. To respect the bond. But that doesn't mean I don't feel the weight of it. Amara watched her closely. There was no hatred in Nia's voice. No sense of trying to take something that didn't belong to her. That somehow made it harder. Do you even know him? Amara asked suddenly, emotion rising again. Do you know the way he laughs when he's nervous? Or how he forgets things when he's excited? Do you know what he dreams about? Nia met her gaze calmly. No, she said. I don't. The honesty hung in the air. But I know what it means to carry a promise that shaped your life, Nia added quietly. And I know what it feels like to stand here, knowing whatever happens next will change everything. Amara's eyes filled, but she blinked the tears back. Kofi ran his hands over his face, the pressure of everything finally starting to show. This isn't right, he said. None of this is fair. No, Mama Zola said softly. It isn't. Another elder spoke this time, his voice deeper, more firm. Fairness is not always part of tradition, he said. But truth must be. Kofi looked around at the faces watching him, people he had grown up with, people who had seen him as a child, who now waited for him to stand as a man. Then he looked at Amara. Her eyes were searching his, but there was something else now too, fear mixed with strength. Like she was preparing herself for an answer she might not want to hear. And then he looked at Nia. Standing there, calm but carrying a lifetime of expectation. Two paths. One shaped by love. One shaped by promise. The air felt almost too thick to breathe. Before you decide, Mama Zola said suddenly, her voice cutting through the moment, there is something else you must understand. All eyes turned to her again. Kofi frowned slightly. What do you mean? Mama Zola's expression changed just slightly. The calm was still there, but now there was something deeper beneath it. Something almost like urgency. That day, she said slowly, when I made that promise, it was not just about marriage. A ripple of confusion moved through the crowd. Kofi's face tightened. What are you saying? Mama Zola stepped forward, her gown brushing softly against the ground. The life that was given back to you, she said, her voice lower now, more intense, was tied to more than a bond between families. Amara felt her heart pound again. Nia's posture shifted slightly, as if even she hadn't heard this part before. There were conditions, Mama Zola continued. Ones I hoped would never need to be spoken aloud. The wind picked up again, stronger this time, as if the world itself was reacting. Kofi shook his head slowly. No. Mama, what did you do? Mama Zola looked at him, her eyes filled with something that hadn't been there before. Fear. If the promise is broken, she said quietly, then what was given can be taken back. The words landed like a sudden storm. Gasps spread through the crowd. Amara's breath caught. Nia's eyes widened just slightly. And Kofi stood completely still, as if the ground beneath him had just disappeared. Because now this was no longer just about love. It was no longer just about choice. It had become something far more dangerous. A decision where the cost might be everything. The words hung in the air like a storm that refused to pass. For a moment no one moved. Kofi stared at his mother, his face pale, his breathing uneven. Taken back? He repeated slowly, as if the meaning was too heavy to accept all at once. What does that even mean? Mama Zola didn't answer immediately. And that silence made everything worse. Amara felt her chest tighten, her thoughts racing faster now. This was no longer just a question of love or tradition. Something deeper, something more frightening had entered the moment, and no one seemed fully in control of it. You're saying his life, Amara began, her voice shaking, is still tied to that day? Mama Zola closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again. I was told there would be balance, she said quietly. That nothing is given without something holding it in place. Nia stepped forward, her calm expression finally cracking just a little. You never told us this, she said, her voice no longer as steady. My family only spoke of a union, a connection. Not this. I was trying to protect him, Mama Zola replied. By hiding the truth? Kofi snapped, his voice rising for the first time. All these years you let me believe I was free. You were alive, she said, her voice firm but filled with emotion. That was all I wanted. The tension surged again. Kofi turned away, running his hands through his hair, trying to think, to breathe, to understand what was real and what wasn't. This doesn't make sense, he muttered. This can't be how life works. You can't just take someone's life back because of a promise. One of the elders stepped forward again, his face serious, his tone careful. There are things in this world, he said slowly, that are not always explained in simple ways. Our traditions carry stories for a reason. But this isn't just a story. Kofi shot back. This is my life. Amara watched him, her heart breaking in a different way now. The man she loved wasn't just torn between two people. He was fighting for something much bigger, something he never even chose. And yet, something about all of this still didn't sit right with her. She looked at Mama Zola again, studying her face, her posture, the way she spoke. There was truth there. But there was also something else. Something missing. You said there were conditions, Amara said slowly, her voice cutting through the rising tension. But you never said who made them. The question shifted the air again. Mama Zola froze just for a second. And Amara noticed. Who gave you this promise? She asked again, stepping forward slightly. Who decided all of this? The crowd grew quiet once more. Even the elders seemed to hesitate. Nia turned toward Mama Zola, her eyes sharper now. Answer her, she said. Because if this is true, then we all deserve to know. Mama Zola's hands tightened slightly at her sides. Then slowly she spoke. It was not just one person, she said. It was a circle. Keepers of old ways. People who understand the balance between life and spirit. A few people in the crowd exchanged uneasy glances. Kofi shook his head. No, I don't accept that. I've lived my whole life without seeing any of this. Why now? Why today? Because today is the moment everything connects, Mama Zola said. The promise, the bond, your future. But Amara still wasn't convinced. Her eyes narrowed slightly, her thoughts piecing something together. And what if it's not? She asked quietly. All eyes turned to her. What if this isn't about some unseen force? She continued. What if this is about something else, something we can't see yet? Kofi looked at her, confused. What are you saying? Amara hesitated for a moment, then spoke again. I'm saying, there are too many things that don't add up. Nia's expression shifted, curiosity mixing with concern. Like what? Amara took a breath. You said your family raised you to believe in this promise, she said to Nia. But did they ever show you proof? Or did they just tell you what was expected? Nia didn't answer right away. And that hesitation said enough. And you, Amara turned to Mama Zola, you said you were given this dress as a sign. But how do we know what you were told back then wasn't influenced by fear? The crowd stirred again. Kofi looked between them, something changing in his expression. Hope, or maybe doubt. I was there, Mama Zola said firmly. I saw what I saw. I felt what I felt. I believe you, Amara said gently. But belief and truth are not always the same thing. The words landed deeply. Even the elders seemed to take them seriously. For the first time, the certainty around the promise began to crack. Nia looked down briefly, then back up. There is something else, she said suddenly. Everyone turned to her. My grandmother, she began slowly. Before she passed, she tried to tell me something about this. Mama Zola's eyes widened slightly. What did she say? She asked. Nia hesitated, as if the memory itself was unclear. She said, not all promises are what they seem. Some are made to protect, and some are made to control. A chill passed through the courtyard. Kofi stepped closer. Control? He repeated. Nia nodded faintly. At the time I didn't understand. I thought she was just warning me to be careful. But now, she looked around at everyone. I'm not so sure anymore. The tension shifted again, this time in a completely different direction. What if the promise wasn't what they thought? What if the fear had been built over years? Mama Zola shook her head slowly, as if trying to reject the idea. No, what I experienced was real. But even her voice didn't carry the same certainty as before. Kofi looked at her, then at Amara, then at Nia. Everything was unraveling. Or maybe, everything was just beginning to reveal itself. And somewhere deep in the crowd, one of the elders spoke again, his voice lower than before. If there is doubt, he said, then the truth must be tested. The words sent a ripple through everyone present. Amara felt her breath catch. Kofi frowned. Tested? How? The elder didn't answer immediately. Instead he looked toward Mama Zola, then toward Nia. And finally back at Kofi. By facing the source of the promise, he said. A heavy silence followed. Because deep down they all understood what that meant. This wasn't going to end here. Not in the courtyard. Not in front of the guests. Whatever truth lay behind this wedding, this gown, this promise, it was waiting somewhere else. And reaching it might change everything they thought they knew. The courtyard no longer felt like a place for celebration. It felt like a crossroads. Kofi looked at the elder, his voice steady but filled with urgency. Then we go, he said. Right now. No more waiting. No more fear. A wave of murmurs passed through the guests, but no one stopped him this time. Amara stepped closer to him, her eyes searching his face. If we do this, she said quietly, we do it together. Kofi nodded without hesitation. Together. Nia watched them, something shifting in her expression again, not resistance this time but acceptance. Then I'm coming too, she said. This promise involves me as well. Mama Zola closed her eyes for a brief moment, as if this was the path she had always feared, and yet knew would come. When she opened them, there was no more hesitation left. Then we end this, she said. The journey was not long, but it felt heavy. The path beyond the hills was quiet, untouched, as if it had been waiting. The air felt different there, still, almost watchful. They reached a clearing surrounded by tall trees, their branches forming a natural circle. The ground was bare in the center, marked by stones arranged in a pattern that spoke of something ancient. Amara felt a chill run through her, but she didn't step back. "This is the place," Mama Zola whispered. Kofi stepped forward, his voice firm. "Then whatever this is, it ends today." For a moment nothing happened. The wind moved softly through the trees and the silence pressed in. Then Nia stepped into the center of the circle. "If this promise is real," she said, her voice steady despite everything, "then let it show itself. Not through fear. Not through stories. But through truth." Her words hung in the air. And then, a voice answered. Not loud, not overwhelming, but present. "You seek truth, yet carry doubt." Everyone froze. Amara's heart raced, but she forced herself to stand still. Kofi moved slightly closer to her, his hand brushing against hers. "Who's there?" he called out. The voice didn't come from a single place. It seemed to echo from the trees, the ground, the air itself. "A promise was made," it said. "A life was given. A bond was formed." Mama Zola stepped forward, her voice trembling now. "I kept my part," she said. "I honored what I was told. I protected my son." "And yet, you hid the truth," the voice replied. She lowered her head. Kofi clenched his fists. "Then hear me now," he said loudly. "I will not live bound by something I didn't choose. If there is a price, then let me face it." Amara tightened her grip on his hand. "No," she said firmly. "We face it together." Nia looked at them both, then stepped forward as well. "And so do I. If this bond was meant to join lives, then all of us have a say in it." The air seemed to shift. For a moment, everything felt still again. Then the voice spoke once more. "The promise was never meant to take choice away." They all froze. Mama Zola looked up, confusion filling her face. "What?" "A life was given," the voice continued, "but not as a chain. As a chance." Kofi frowned. "Then why all this? Why the fear? Why the warning that my life could be taken back?" There was a pause. And then the answer came, quieter this time. "Because fear was added by those who did not understand." Slowly all eyes turned to Mama Zola. Her breath caught. "No," she whispered. "That's not what I was told." "You were given truth," the voice said. "But it was shaped by your fear, and by the words of others who feared losing control of the promise." Nia's expression shifted. "My grandmother," she said softly. "She tried to tell me." The pieces began to fall into place. Amara felt it too. "This was never about forcing a marriage," she said. "It was about connection, about honoring life." The air grew lighter, as if something heavy was finally lifting. Kofi looked at his mother, his voice softer now. "You were trying to protect me." Tears filled Mama Zola's eyes. "I thought, if the promise was broken, I would lose you." "You won't," the voice said gently. "The life given cannot be taken back for choosing love." Silence followed. But this time it wasn't heavy. It was freeing. Kofi exhaled slowly, years of unseen weight leaving him. He turned to Amara, his eyes clear now. "I choose you," he said without hesitation. Amara's breath caught, but this time it was different. Relief. Real and deep. Nia watched them, a small, peaceful smile forming on her face. "Then the promise is fulfilled in another way," she said. "Not by force, but by truth." Mama Zola stepped forward, her shoulders no longer carrying the same burden. "Forgive me," she said, her voice breaking. "I let fear guide me." Kofi pulled her into an embrace. "You were trying to save me," he said. "That's what matters." The wind moved again, softer now, almost warm. And just like that, the tension that had followed them for years was gone. They returned to the village as the sun began to lower, the light softer, calmer. The guests were still waiting. And when they saw Kofi and Amara walking side by side, hand in hand, something shifted in the air. The wedding resumed. This time not under fear, but under choice. Mama Zola stood quietly, watching, her white gown no longer a symbol of confusion, but of a journey completed. Nia remained for the ceremony, not as a rival, but as a witness to something rare, truth winning over tradition. As the vows were about to be spoken, Amara glanced once toward Mama Zola. And that's when she noticed something strange. The gown. It wasn't as bright as before. The white had softened, almost faded. As if it had never truly belonged to this moment. Amara frowned slightly, her heart skipping. After the ceremony she walked closer, her curiosity pulling her in. "Mama," she said gently, "this dress, where is it from again?" Mama Zola looked down at it, her expression thoughtful. I kept it all these years, she said. From that day. Amara reached out, her fingers brushing lightly against the fabric. And then she froze. Because for a brief second, the gown didn't feel real. It felt light. Almost like air. She pulled her hand back quickly, her heart racing again. Mama? She whispered. But when she looked up, Mama Zola was already staring at the dress too. Her face slowly changing. Because the gown was beginning to disappear. Thread by thread. Right there in front of them. And no one else seemed to notice. Mama Zola didn't move. Her eyes stayed fixed on the gown as the fabric slowly faded, like mist disappearing under the morning sun. What was once solid and bright now looked thin, almost transparent. The edges softened first, then the folds until it no longer held the shape it once did. Amara stepped closer, her voice low. You see it too, right? Mama Zola nodded slowly, her breath uneven. Yes, she whispered. I see it. Kofi turned toward them, noticing the change in their expressions. What's wrong? He asked, concerned. Amara hesitated for a second. The dress, it's disappearing. Kofi frowned and looked at his mother. At first he didn't understand. The gown still seemed there, but as he focused he noticed it, the way the light passed through parts of it, the way it no longer moved like real fabric. Nia, standing nearby, stepped forward quietly. Her eyes softened as she observed it. It's letting go, she said gently. Mama Zola swallowed hard. All these years, I held on to it like it was proof. Like it was something I had to protect. And maybe it was, Nia replied. But not in the way you thought. The last threads of the gown faded slowly, until Mama Zola was left standing in her simple clothes beneath it. No one else in the crowd reacted. The music still played softly in the background. Laughter from the wedding guests continued, unaware of what had just taken place. It was as if the moment belonged only to them. Mama Zola looked down at her hands now empty. For the first time in years, there was nothing there to remind her of fear. Nothing to hold on to. She let out a long breath. I carried that promise like a burden, she said quietly. But it was never meant to weigh me down like that. Kofi stepped closer and placed his hand gently on her shoulder. You were trying to do what you thought was right, he said. That's what matters. Tears filled her eyes, but this time they didn't come from fear or regret. They came from release. I almost lost today because of it, she admitted, her voice soft. I almost let your happiness slip away. Amara stepped forward, her expression warm despite everything. But you didn't, she said. You told the truth when it mattered. Mama Zola looked at her, really looked at her this time, not as someone connected to a complicated moment, but as the woman her son loved. Thank you, she said quietly. Nia watched the exchange, a small smile forming on her face. There was peace in her eyes now, something that hadn't been there before. I think this is what my grandmother meant, she said. Some promises aren't meant to control our future, they're meant to guide us to understand it. Amara nodded slowly. And sometimes we misunderstand them because we're afraid. Kofi looked between all of them, his voice steady now. No more fear, he said. Not in this family. Not in our story. The wedding continued, but it felt different now, lighter, more real. The drums picked up again, stronger this time, and the energy in the courtyard slowly returned. Guests danced, elders smiled, and the whispers that had once carried confusion now carried something else. Respect. Understanding. And a story that would be told for years, not as a tale of fear but as a lesson. Later, as the sun began to set and the sky turned warm with color, Kofi and Amara sat quietly for a moment away from the crowd. Amara leaned slightly toward him. Did you ever really believe your life could be taken away? She asked softly. Kofi thought for a moment before answering. Maybe a small part of me did, he admitted. Not because I saw proof, but because I trusted the fear around it. Amara nodded. Fear can feel very real. But today showed me something, he said looking at her. Truth feels different. It doesn't trap you. It frees you. Amara smiled gently. Across the courtyard, Mama Zola sat beside Nia. The two women, once connected by tension, now shared a quiet understanding. I'm sorry, Mama Zola said again, for the way things were carried to you. Nia shook her head softly. We both carried something we didn't fully understand, she said. But we let it go. Mama Zola smiled faintly. What will you do now? Nia looked out toward the horizon, where the last light of the day rested. I'll live my life, she said simply. Not based on what was expected, but on what feels right. Mama Zola nodded, a sense of pride in her eyes. As night slowly settled, the celebration grew warmer. Lights flickered, music played, and laughter filled the air again. And in the middle of it all, Kofi and Amara stood together, no longer caught between past and future, but firmly in the present they had chosen. The story of that day would travel far beyond the village. People would speak of the mother who wore a wedding gown to her son's wedding, of the promise that almost changed everything, and of the truth that set it right. But those who understood it deeply would remember something more. That not every tradition is meant to be followed without question. That not every promise is meant to bind. And that love, when chosen freely without fear, has the power to rewrite even the oldest stories. As the night carried on, Mama Zola looked up at the sky, her heart lighter than it had been in years. The gown was gone. The fear was gone. And in its place was peace.